now. And with that, viewers, let's move on to news from COP30. The COP30 climate talks in Brazil ended with a modest deal that drew mixed reactions worldwide. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said many, including indigenous groups and young people, may feel disappointed, warning that the gap between current action and scientific demands remains dangerously wide. Colombia and more than 80 countries criticized the deal for leaving out a roadmap to phase out fossil fuels, while small island states called it imperfect but progress. China hailed the talks as a success in difficult circumstances, and India emphasized the importance of balancing development and climate action. Turkey and Australia reached a compromise to co-host next year's COP31 in Antalya, with Australia chairing formal negotiations and pre-COP technical talks set in a Pacific Island nation. And I want to welcome Major General retired Sudhakarji, who's an international affairs expert, into the discussion. He's joining us live from New Delhi. A very warm welcome to you, Sudhakarji, and thanks for joining us here on NewsX World. Now, clearly, many participants of the COP30 summits are disappointed, especially with the fact that the meeting was not able to draw a conclusive deal on phasing out fossil fuels completely. Why do you think that really happened, and how does that affect climate change going forward?
Yeah. Good afternoon, Kriti. Thank you for inviting me for your show. I think it will do well if you allow me a little time. Let me explain
Sure.
to our viewers what is this all about. Because certainly, you see, South Africa is gone for G20. Why this COP30 is coming up? People need to understand the COP30 climate conference was held in Brazil at a place called Belém in November 25 only. And it had generated multiple proposals, several proposals, and one of them was called as Global Muturao. This is the decision, though the final agreement was controversial, yet the proposal had focused on climate finance, forest protection, energy transition, and there was a huge amount of debate over the fossil fuel having been phased out in the roadmap. Now, the last point which I am covering is the primary issue because of which the controversy has risen. Now, allow me just to very quick reflections on the point so that the viewers get, if not entirely, at least some kind of a understanding.
Please go on.
So the climate finance, I must emphasize on the point that the agreement had called for developed countries to at least triple their funding to help poorer nations to adapt to climate change by 2035. This builds on this is COP30, next year is going to be COP31, and before this was COP29. Now, this builds on a COP29 goal for developed nations to provide at least 300 billion annually by 2035 to developing nations. So from developed countries to developing nations, this is to be understood. Second point, which has actually caused a lot of friction and a lot of communication gap and misunderstanding, is the fossil fuel transition roadmap. You see, the COP30, which took place in Brazil, the presidency was the Brazilian presidency. It proposed the creation of two voluntary roadmaps outside the main negotiating text, one for a just transition away from fossil fuels, and the second one for halting and reversing the deforestation. Now, these are meant to be a process for countries to set clear pathways to meet existing pledges. The basic issue is that it has been, in a way, divorced from the COP pledges or the proposal, which shouldn't be. It should become an integral and inseparable part. The third point which I wish to highlight for our viewers is the Tropical Forests Forever Facility. It is in short called as TFFF. Brazil launched this initiative, a blended finance investment fund, aiming to mobilize around 125 billion from public and private sources to reward tropical forest countries for preserving their forest. And one of the important points is the global goal on adaptation. Countries adopted 59 global indicators for tracking progress on national adaptation plans. And the transition mechanism includes a commitment to develop a mechanism to streamline and coordinate efforts to protect the rights of the workers and communities affected by the shift away from high carbon industries. Now, there is a health action plan which was formulated in Belém. It's a flagship outcome aimed at strengthening global health systems to cope better with the impacts of climate change. Now, there are groups of countries, number of countries which supported the proposal. There are large number of countries which also opposed to the proposal. Now, why did the support? The support was based on progress on finance and adaptation. Supporters, including the Alliance of Small Island States and some European Union representatives, they acknowledged the agreement as a step forward, especially the call to triple adaptation finance and the formalization of global adaptation indicators. The forest protection and indigenous voices, the spirit of Belém, and opposition. Allow me to highlight, this is important, this has to be understood by our viewers. Very quick points are, there is a weak language on the fossil fuels. The main point of contention was the absence of strong binding language or a concrete timeline to phase out or even a roadmap in the main text. Now, this has been discussed in number of COPs prior, but it was very unfortunate to find it missing in the text. You know, the oil producing nations, including Saudi Arabia, Russia, and some emerging economies, they successfully blocked these efforts. There is a lack of ambition. The many climate advocates, youth groups, and countries like Colombia, which you alluded to in your preamble, they argued the deal fell short of scientific demands to keep the 1.50 Celsius goal within reach, calling the final agreement an empty deal. And the finance gap, this is actually, if you ask me, the center of gravity is this one. While new finance goals were set, it is coming in trillions now, as against the billions earlier. The developing nations expressed concern that the funding levels were still inadequate or drop in the ocean and lacked clarity on how much would be in the form of grants versus loans. Organizational controversies, it actually faced criticism over high costs and accommodation shortage that hindered participation, and the controversial clearing of an Amazon section for a highway project, which critics label as potentially greenwashing. Now, the basic issue, as per me, is commitments are being made, promises are being made. When it comes to contributing money, the fund, in one particular year, it is supposed to be more than 300 billion. Now, instead of 300 billion, I am given to understand unofficially, I don't have any solid evidence to support my this thing. It is not even touching 100 billion. It is just about 25 billion which has been marshaled. So it is peanuts in such a huge kind of a canvas and horizon where the requirement is much more. And second point is that these funds have to be given by the leading economy of the developed countries to the developing nations. Like India, for one, is forming part of the developing countries. It has to get the funds, only then you go in for the renewable energy, only then you can work towards achieving that bottom line, the cutoff temperature of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now it is not happening. So if it doesn't happen, the technology transfer doesn't take place, then the complete concept of COP actually goes to a grinding halt.
Yeah, so well, that's clearly not possible or plausible now. We don't see the international community anymore meeting that target of sticking to 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature.
Yeah, but you see, the basic point is the climate change. Countries like USA is neither participating in G20 nor is it has backed out from Paris Agreement. Let me tell you.
In fact, that is also what I wanted to ask you. Do you think both the United States and China had to gain by staying away or staying quiet from the COP30 summit?
No, no way. They're creating a disaster. They've opened up another front. You know, post-pandemic, the whole world is in a neck-deep kind of a criticality with the ongoing conflict in Central Europe and Middle East, and we have just finished with phase 1 of Operation Sindoor, and we know how things are around the Indian subcontinent. You see, now by backing away, by staying away from COP, the common challenges in the world order today are being ignored. Tomorrow, you see, the day is not far when the USA and China both would be suffering. They will be at the center of all kinds of suffering. Let's say, for example, the Yalom Sangpo, the Brahmaputra River, that concept, they're building a dam at the Great Bend. Now, that construction of that dam at that Great Bend, disregarding the climatic and the seismic, the earthquake-prone area, all kinds of dangers. If China goes ahead in making that dam,
Yeah.
just to produce 60 gigawatts of power generation, and it is going to cause flooding, it is going to create lots of danger for the lower riparian states. So climate change being what it is today, people need to understand, because of climate change, the melting of the glacier is taking faster. The water which was non-existent during dry season or lean season, your rivers have started going in for spate, and they are carrying out erosion, soil erosion, causing floods in the lean season. So therefore, such kind of measures have to be actually collectively taken up by all the countries in the world, leave alone, USA and China. These are two superpowers or global powers. Their staying away from these major decisions or major platforms is going to create another front which is avoidable for the global order. We have enough of geopolitical churn, enough
Sure.
of violence taking place. I think we need to come together for such kind of common challenges, be it the climate change or the terrorism or supply chain disruptions. These kind of things, we need to come together to find a common solution for the global order.
Well, absolutely. Thank you, Major General retired Sudhakar there joining us live on NewsX World and explaining the outcomes very deftly to our viewers. And with that, viewers, let's move